Hello my spooky friends, welcome back to the channel. It is such a sad time. October is officially over. Halloween has come and gone once again. But I'm here to do my October wrap up because we're almost a week into November and I have a lot to tell you about. So I do have 11 books to show you. 5 of those were not fiction books, so they will be their own little category. And 6 of them were fictionalized stories. But I'll talk about those in the end and I'll do like a little ranking of those. But as far as the coffee table books and the non-fiction, whatever I read, I'll get to those first and we will just take it from there. First of all, did anyone watch Halloween Ends? So I bought this coffee table book a few months ago and I was waiting specifically for Halloween to get here so I could finally look through it and enjoy all the artwork, and I did. It is this bad boy, the Halloween art book. And this is by Printed in Blood. Now, this was filled with such spectacular artwork from different people around the world, I'm assuming. All different kinds of great art. Look at that. Awesome. I really would love to have some of these like as a poster to put on my walls. But yeah, Michael Myers, he's the best. Right, Laurie. So really loved all the artwork in this. It was worth the purchase and I would highly recommend it for any Halloween fan. Sticking with horror movies, we have another coffee table book that I looked through every single page, read every single line. This is the horror poster art edited by Tony Norman and Graham Marsh. So this is a coffee table book filled with all different kinds of movie posters. It talks about different artists and directors and even actors and of course the artists who did a lot of these posters. It was a really good read, a really fast one, and a great coffee table book. And of course again there's Halloween. Love it. They have all different kinds from the 20s and 30s up through the 90s, I believe. So yeah, another great time for October. And then the last little book I have to show you also relates to horror movies. That is How to Survive a Horror Movie by Seth Grahame-Smith with a foreword by Wes Craven. So this little book tells you exactly what you need to do in order to survive zombie apocalypses or ghosts or demons and all different kinds of stuff, slashers of course, and possessed dolls. This was just silly fun, a quick little read. It has some good little artwork in there as well, which added to the enjoyment. It was very quick. There's nothing really special about it. I mean, to survive a horror movie, all you really need is some common sense, right? So but it was an interesting little fun read. Okay, moving into like the non-fiction horror stories. The first one I read was The World of Lore Monstrous Creatures by Aaron Mahnke. So this is a collection of podcasts that Aaron Mahnke does over on like Spotify. You can also listen to him on any kind of podcast app, I guess. But this is a collection filled with all different kinds of monstrous creatures, the lore that surrounds them, where they might have originated, different true accounts of people's encounters with like ghosts and the Jersey Devil and the Mothman. It is very interesting to see where a lot of our superstitions come from and how superstitions really ran the world back in the day before modern technology and a lot of our scientific advances came along. It was really interesting. I really enjoyed it. So if you're a fan of folklore or any kind of true life accounts of the strange and bizarre, definitely check this one out. So the last nonfiction book I want to show you is An Illustrated History of Ghosts by Adam Alshig Boardman. So this is basically tells you a lot of ghostly histories around the world, and it comes with a lot of drawings. The artwork isn't all that incredible. It's pretty basic and generic little accounts of different types of ghosts and different haunted places and stuff like that. It was a good read. I mainly bought it for the cover. I mean, hello, it's a ghost. But it does go into details about like the Fox sisters and seances and all that kind of stuff. So if you're a fan of ghostly tales and ghost stories, you might want to check this one out at some point. I don't highly recommend it because it's pretty basic. It was okay. It was worth the read, I guess. I'll probably hang on to it. Okay, let's get into the 6 spooky fiction books that I read in October. I will go from the ones I enjoyed the least to my absolute favorites of the month. Spoiler alert, I didn't give 5 stars to any of these. I did really enjoy a few of them, some of them not so much, so let's get started. So the book I enjoyed the least I gave 2 stars to, and technically I didn't finish it, but let me explain why. So I'm talking about The Ultimate Halloween, which is a collection of different short stories from different authors from different times, and it was very just kind of boring, honestly. I did read everything except the one novella at the end, which was The Banshee's Comb. And the reason I did not finish that was because it was written in dialect form. So the last half, this part right here, was all of that story. I can't read stories that are told in dialect form. That's so out of my area of interest, out of my comfort zone. I did read all these. I came close to DNFing this collection twice, but I wanted to see, you know, if any of them improved. There was only really one story I enjoyed in this one. There were a couple of cute ones, a couple I liked kind of, but the one that I really liked the most was Into the Abyss by R.J. Lewis. So let me just tell you about that one. So that is a story about a guy whose wife or girlfriend recently left him. He's like a special effects makeup artist. So he gets commissioned to do this party, and he gets a very detailed image of what he is supposed to look like. He's supposed to look like this demon. And so he goes all out and he looks super realistic and super creepy. So he goes to this club where he's supposed to perform, I guess. And once he's there, there's some weirdness going on. It's like the club from hell, okay? So he goes and meets the owner, who's like this big wig in New York City, but no one's ever really seen him. And that's because he's actually a demon. So the demon proposes to our main character to work for him exclusively. He will get paid very handsomely in order to make him a human looking face so he can make public appearances. So sorry if you didn't want to know all that, but I don't think anybody's going to go out and specifically search for that just to read it. So that's the gist of it. It was pretty interesting, kind of creepy. The rest of the stories were just very basic, run-of-the-mill stories. So yeah, this was definitely my least favorite of the month. So the next story I want to tell you about really surprised me how much I did not enjoy it. I did end up giving this one 2.5 stars. But that's going to be Hocus Pocus and the all-new sequel. This is a story about the Sanderson sister witches and how they come back from the dead one 1993 Halloween night after the black candle or whatever was lit. But the first 200 pages of this is basically just a retelling step by step from the 1993 movie Hocus Pocus, which I absolutely loved. This was written in 2018. And so everybody knows the story of Hocus Pocus. I'm not going to get into that, except to say it was interesting to read that part of it, although it didn't really add anything to it except a minor character, which ended up playing a bigger role in the sequel. So the sequel takes place 25 years later in 2018 and centers around Max and Allison's 17-year-old daughter, Poppy. And so her and her friends decide to go to the Sanderson house because she's always heard the stories but never believed them. And she wanted to go there because she's a rebel all of a sudden. Whatever, so they go, they bring the witches back by accident. And of course, chaos ensues. I really kind of wanted to DNF this, honestly. The sequel was so very, 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 very YA. It was so cringy in some points. I was like, ugh, I'm really not enjoying it. But I want to read how it ends because I love the Sanderson sisters. I just didn't enjoy it all that much. And apparently it doesn't have great reviews from a lot of people. So I think if you are a fan of Hocus Pocus or the Sanderson sisters, just watch the movies. That's all you really need to do. I'm so sad about it though, because I really do love the movie. I really wanted to love this. It's just too YA for me. I didn't really enjoy it. I wouldn't recommend it all that much, but I did enjoy it better than the collection of the Halloween short stories. So I might get a little bit of hate for this one for ranking it so low, but talking about the Halloween Tree by Ray Bradbury, I ended up giving this one 3 stars. So this is a middle grade from the 70s set on Halloween night where a group of boys are going trick-or-treating. It's their favorite night of the year, but their friend Pipkin is not feeling so well, and he's like the leader of this group, I guess. So he tells them to go on and he'll catch up with them in a little bit. So they do. They end up at this creepy old mansion in the middle of the woods with a big old Halloween tree in the yard. And there was a few points around that was really spooky. I thought, oh, that's really good. But then their friend Pipkin gets taken by this entity. I don't even know what that was, really. So the old man that lives in this big mansion or whatever, it's very weird looking, and his name is Moonshroud. And so he promises to take the 7 boys to find their friend. So he takes them across time and space, and all the while looking for Pipkin, they're learning the different traditions and religions and everything that went into making Halloween today as we know it, what it was. So each boy's costume represents something that they're going to travel to and learn about. And it was just okay. It was kind of boring a little bit. There was like this part at the end I thought was kind of really sinister and really unnecessary. But it was just an okay read. I enjoyed it okay. It's just not my favorite read. It's a classic. I would recommend you checking it out. This next one is one that is making the rounds around YouTube right now and around Instagram because Halloween, a lot of people seem to have read this last month. That is Dark Harvest by Norman Partridge. I gave this one 3.5 stars, I believe. So this story takes place in a small town where every Halloween, the town's teenage boys are locked in their rooms, isolated for 5 days without food. On the night of Halloween, they are released in order to hunt down and kill the October Boy. So every year, the October Boy rises from the grave, from the ground, and he is on a mission, and I can't really tell you what that is, but the boys are out to stop him, and whoever ends up killing the October Boy wins something. His family ends up well off, and that's really all I can say. This was a okay story. It was almost really good, but the origins of this is never explained. I think that's what I had a big problem with, and it wasn't really all that horrifying, honestly. If you haven't read it, I'd recommend it. I know they're supposed to be making a movie adaptation of this at some point. I thought it was coming out this year, but apparently not. Maybe next year. I am glad I read it. It's a quick read. That's really all I can say about it. It wasn't all that horrific, and I think if it had been, I really would have enjoyed it more. It's set in 1963, by the way, and the writing style was pretty different. Yeah, that's all I can say about it. These last 2 books I gave 4 stars to. They were both written by independent authors, which is very exciting. But my second place enjoyment in this ranking actually goes to one that seems to be a lot of people's favorite. That's Autumn Crow by Cameron Chaney. Yes, the king of BookTube himself, Cameron Chaney, wrote this a few years ago. I finally got around to reading it. I'm so glad that I did. I really did enjoy it. It is a collection of 8 short stories, all centered around this creepy little town called Autumn Crow, where it is Halloween every day. I really enjoyed most of these stories, namely Burnt Brownies, Frost, and Saving Face. I think Saving Face might have been my favorite because it was the most horrific, I think most graphic. And I really enjoyed this. Cameron is such a good writer. I really look forward to reading more of his works in the future. So if you've not read this, it's definitely worth the October Halloween spooky reads. So what was my absolute favorite book of the month? What was my favorite read? It's actually one that was not set on Halloween. Maybe that says something about me. But at any rate, that's going to be Don't Call It All by Robbie Miles. This is a middle grade story about a guy named Jesse Davidson I think he was in middle school, but his parents won't let him have a cell phone. And all of his classmates have one, and that's the big thing to do in order to like make connections as a kid in this day and age, is to have a cell phone and be on Instagram and Twitter and all that stuff. But his parents refused to get him one. They don't think he's quite ready for one yet. But there were some creepy moments in this one, I will say. So this takes place in New York City, and his friend and him are walking along one day. They see a crowd around this like homeless looking man. But when they get closer, he's like really bad off. He looks terrible. A little bit later, he runs across this guy in the park while he's walking his dog. And he promises Jesse that he can have a cell phone as long as he makes him a promise. And he's like, okay, well, what is it? He's like, you can never return this phone to me, ever. Jesse's like, well, I wasn't planning to. So he takes the phone and he calls his friend, and he's so excited he has a cell phone. But of course, things start taking a sinister turn, and his phone starts acting on its own, like making posts and videos and stuff. And posting it like Jesse's posting it, but he's not, and he's all confused, and it's causing major problems for his friends and his sort of new friends. It's also very middle schoolish, high schoolish, whatever, but I really enjoyed it. It wasn't cringy like Hocus Pocus the sequel was. This was a very cute, kind of sinister story, and I really enjoyed it. I was very impressed. All right, well, that's it. Those are the 11 books I read or flipped through in the month of October. I think that's the most books for a wrap-up I've ever done on here, so pretty proud of that, even though a lot of them weren't super long. They weren't all fiction. They weren't all centered around Halloween, but I'm counting it as a success. So what was your favorite spooky read of October? Did you read a lot of stories centered around Halloween, or do you just read horror stories all year long? It doesn't matter. Let me know all that in the comments. I would love to know. As for me, I'm going to put these books away, take down my Halloween decorations, and get ready to clear off my shelves, because in another couple of weeks, I will be doing my Stephen King collection, where I drag those out of the garage, out of the box, replace these books with those, and start anew. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you had a great October, a spooky Halloween, a really fun time, and I will see you in the next one.